There's a common misconception about the best way to build your skill set as a dietitian. Most think that coming out of your internship, they need to find a job, working for someone else to develop the skills needed to succeed. And I'm debunking that myth right now. Dietitian bosses build their skills by making the decision to get started, by consistently showing up, not for a boss you don't even like, but for yourself and in your own private practice. I'm Libby Rothschild, creator of Dietitian Boss. Welcome to my channel. My program empowers dietitians and nutritionists to create their own private practice from scratch and emboldens already established practitioners to think bigger. My method provides a step-by-step process to improve how you market yourself on social media so your practice can become far more profitable and help more people. I want to share a story with you about our client, Emily, who also had the false impression that in order to build her skills, she would need to work in a clinical job. Before going into the dietetics field, Emily was a military officer. So this is her second career, like several other clients of ours. When Emily finished up her internship, she ended up applying for over 60 jobs and got to the point where she decided enough was enough. Why was she bending over backwards trying to work for someone else? She was a busy mom and she had a lot going on in her life. So she had the thought, well, what if I work for myself? It was a blessing in disguise because Emily didn't land any one of the jobs, and that led her to the Dietitian Boss program, where she learned how to market herself and her services. Before she found me and my team, Emily was yearning for flexibility. With a toddler at home in the midst of COVID and another baby on the way, she needed it. Emily, like many others, thought she needed to do all the things all at once in order to start and grow her private practice. Knowing absolutely nothing about building a website, she went ahead and got a domain, taught herself how to build on WordPress, and got her website up and running. And she didn't really have a clear sense of direction other than knowing that she wanted to be in the intuitive eating space. And so her website just sat there and she stopped making progress. A few months went by and she started to think about the idea of private practice again. How nice would it be, she thought, to have flexibility as a mom? So she looked into getting her LLC, and 1 week before she got on the state of California's website to start her LLC process, somebody took her domain name. Remember the one she had started her website just a few months ago? Yep, someone in California registered an LLC with that same name. So Emily was back to square one. Emily had done all of this work, but had no following, no clients, and no one to send to her cute little website she built and now needed a new name. Nothing she created had gotten used. Dietitians are full of information and tend to want to share. Emily wanted to share everything she knew with her followers that she did have, but she wasn't sharing things that were necessarily helpful to her audience or solving their biggest problem. Emily was posting random quotes with no call to action, meaning she wasn't telling people what to do or where to go, so they weren't clear. And no one even knew she was open to taking clients or what her intentions were. Emily knew that in order for her to build her private practice and do it successfully, she had to invest in herself. She had to get help because she was tired of floundering with no idea about what she was doing. Comment below if you can relate. Instagram felt like a whole new world for Emily, and this being her second career, coming from the military where the use of social media was almost discouraged, Emily didn't have a lot of experience. She didn't have an Instagram feed, and in fact, she'd always been kind of anti-Instagram, which is exactly what the Dietitian Boss program teaches you to use as your number one platform. Emily began focusing her marketing primarily on Instagram and felt such a relief. She no longer was spreading herself thin and trying to worry about building a website and building things before she had any clients in the door. Emily focused her message, or niched down, which solved her posting random quotes struggle, and now she showed up to share all of the wonderful information that her specific ideal clients want to hear. Content creation becomes easy when you know who you're talking to and why. Emily's now working with runners and helping them to stop overeating at night. She teaches them how to properly fuel themselves to hit their running goals, focusing on what their biggest problem is. Emily has found that she gets more interaction on her stories than she does in her actual posts. She gets a lot of feedback in her direct messages and had some of the best conversations because of her story content. She even shares that she's self-conscious of her voice, especially in recordings and the ones that she posts in her stories. She tells herself to remember that people aren't really paying attention to that. They're listening to her, and it's important not to be overly critical of yourself. Just be who you are and show up. Not only is Emily's audience listening to her, but she's listening to them. Emily pays attention to what people are asking her and then addresses those topics in her feed. She also asks questions like, hey, what do you want to see more of? And what issues are you struggling with? She has made it a point to have a notepad with her at all times because she'll be lying in bed at night and think of some really good content to post. So she writes it down so she doesn't forget. Emily has achieved the flexibility that she wanted so badly with a toddler at home while expecting her second child. She's chosen to work part-time in her private practice and has set long-term goals after the baby arrives to be making $5,000 a month consistently and running group coaching programs. Contributing to her family finances is extremely important to Emily. Her biggest piece of advice is don't wait. You can keep making excuses that could go on forever for why you shouldn't start a practice. But you definitely shouldn't work for someone else coming out of your internship. You can start while you're a student and learn as you go, like so many other dietitian bosses. To hear a story of a dietitian boss who started as a student, I want you to check out Stephanie, who began building her private practice in my program as an RD to be while helping brides while she is one herself.